End of the century. The end of the 80s coincided with Janet's senior year of college. The start of 1990 would mean the century itself was almost over. And there was a greater than zero chance that humanity would be gone by then. 2000 didn't seem like it could be a real year that humans could live in, or so Janet thought. It was the beginning of October when Robbie caught her after class and asked if he could walk her somewhere. She'd had a crush ever since the start of the school year. He was her type. Long, dark hair covering his eyes, skinny frame, punk fashion, her own Joey Ramone. She thought he felt it too, as his eyes often lingered on her from across the lecture hall. In spite of Olivia and Heather telling her it was only a matter of time before they hooked up, they had yet to exchange more than a stray word here and there, until that afternoon. "Do you like Halloween?" Robbie asked as leaves crunched beneath their feet. Janet paused, taking in the scene around her. From a distance, the quad, red, orange, and yellow as far as the eye could see, was punctuated with jack-o'-lanterns. The buildings themselves had paper witches, ghosts, and scarecrows taped to their windows. Come summer, she'd go back to California, and perfect Plimpton, New Hampshire autumns, like this one, would soon be a memory. "Janet?" Robbie repeated. "Oh, yeah, I love it," Janet lied. There was something about the holiday that always gave her the chills. She could barely handle scary movies. She knew Heather felt the same, but Olivia lived for this time of year. "Good, because I'm having a party. You and your friends should come," he said, managing a smile. "Okay, we're in," she said. "Right on. It's Halloween night. I'll tell you where." The tingle of arousal spread through her body as they continued to walk. "Hey, you're from California, right?" he asked. She nodded. "So, fun fact, I'm sure you know about the Green Cottage? It's on Maple Street, just up the road." Janet nodded. She knew of the crime, but not much else. Yeah, this couple that was murdered there in the 40s. The son hid under the bed, and now he's this freak who supposedly lives up there. Some kids disappeared in 1969, Janet said. Olivia had told her the story of the Nashua Five at the start of freshman year. Anyway, there are rumors they ran into the sun. Maybe ended up at the house? I've always wanted to check it out, but you're too scared, Janet teased. No. They both laughed. Her body tingled again as he put his hand on her back. "Anyway, I'm this way," Robbie said, pointing left. "And I'm that way," Janet replied, pointing in the other direction. Their eyes stayed on each other for a moment. There was something deeper to this feeling, something different. It was desire, but with an added layer. "I want to get to know you." She watched him walk out of her line of sight. Then she took her Walkman out of her bag, letting Joey Ramone's voice drown out the rest of the world as she made a stop. At the library, Janet pieced the case together through faded newspaper clippings. One of the first headlines was, "Plimpton Couple Found Dead." Below it was a grainy black and white photo of a man in a plaid hunting jacket, wearing a vacant expression, his arm around a woman in a fur coat. Janet was confused for a split second before realizing this was Roger and Celia Green. She'd never known what they'd looked like. These days, they were more urban legends than people who actually lived. Celia had a son from a previous marriage. Wayne was his name. Whether or not he still lived there, nobody knew. On that frosty October night in 1947, he'd been awoken by the sounds of his mother's screams. Then he'd hid under the bed. His aunt had come by with breakfast that morning. It had been so cold that there was a layer of frost on the ground when she saw their mangled bodies. There'd been so much blood in their bedroom that no one would have guessed their bedsheets were originally white. The police found Wayne still under his bed, frozen like ice. He went to live with his aunt and uncle in New York before eventually coming back to New Hampshire. In 1969, 5 friends from Nashua went missing. They'd last been sighted at a grocery store in Plimpton, talking to a man who matched Wayne's description. Nothing ever came of it, and their bodies were never found. It's kind of weird, don't you think? Heather said that night over cheap pizza, stale beer, and the scent of marijuana smoke. People died. It's not Disneyland. We'll just go and see it. We won't go in. Come on, it'll be fun. Olivia set down her beer and looked Janet in the eye. Who are you, and what have you done with Janet Sullivan? She gestured to Janet's dark pixie cut. Cutting off all your hair, and now this? I don't know, Janet said quietly. I guess I've been thinking about how fast time goes. Thoughts of the Greens spun through Janet's mind in the weeks leading up to Halloween. Celia and Roger had been a perfect couple. They had met volunteering on a scrap metal drive. Wayne's father had died before he was born, drafted into World War II. Roger was Celia's second chance at love, and the 3 of them had an idyllic life in their cottage on Maple Street. Until it was all abruptly ripped away. It seemed unfathomable that they'd never caught the person who'd done it. It had been long enough since the crime that only a select few remembered what the town was like before. As she passed through each day, all different, yet all the same, Janet couldn't shake the feeling that she was biding her time. Everything from her classes to the partying and the meaningless sex was a distraction from the inevitable. It wasn't like she had much to look forward to anyway. She'd always been mediocre. Too mediocre to do anything meaningful with her English degree. Besides, picturing herself after college only ever brought back a black, empty void. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Teachers, counselors, and employers would ask. The truth was, she didn't. Anyway, what did it matter? It never seemed to make sense to Janet that everyone lived for the future when they could all be dead tomorrow. Even her relationship with her 2 closest friends wasn't the same. Mostly because they were playing at the absurd notion that they'd all keep in touch after graduation. It was like high school all over again. On October 30th, the girls smoked weed and watched It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown on TV. Their costumes were set. They'd be the 3 Heathers from the movie. Janet, Heather Duke. Olivia, Heather McNamara. Heather would be Heather Chandler. When they were figuring out what to do, Olivia had complained the group costume was incomplete because they didn't have a Veronica. Heather just said, "Come on, humor me." The girls stopped at a liquor store first. The elderly clerk flirted with Heather, and she'd flirted back as he asked who they were all supposed to be. Only Janet bore a resemblance to Shannon Doherty. Heather and Olivia didn't look like their characters in the slightest. Because Janet was the designated driver, Heather and Olivia passed a flask back and forth. "Don't worry," Olivia said from the back seat. "You and Robbie will be plenty warm tonight." Redness flooded into Janet's cheeks. "Come on. You know her, right? Heather teased. Unless you're saving yourself for Joey Ramone, Olivia said with a mischievous grin. Shut up, Janet said, her face bright red. Olivia started playfully laughing, and Janet had to tell them to stop so she could focus. They were about to turn onto Maple Street. It was so dark that the girls wondered if they were in the right place. Then they saw it, hand printed on the mailbox. Green. Janet saw the dirt path snaking up the hill, leading to the cottage. Not a single light was on. Away from streetlights, and underneath the faint glow of the moon, this must have been exactly what the street was like in the 40s. The crickets, the leaves rustling in the wind. Some things never changed. Are you sure this is it? Olivia asked. In answer to their question, they saw a figure walking towards them. He was tall, muscular, and square-jawed. His sandy hair was streaked with gray. He wore a red plaid shirt and jeans. The man smelled of pine needles and wood smoke as he approached. Fuck. Can I help you girls? Yeah, we're lost, Janet said. The lie was so half-baked that she knew he didn't believe her. Where are you trying to go? He asked. Downtown, she answered, continuing her lie. We took a wrong turn. I imagine you three have got places to go. People to see, he said. Well, Janet started. If you girls aren't in a rush, I was about to get a fire started. And there's hot apple cider on the stove. Well, I wouldn't mind a hot drink while you gave us directions, Janet said. Sounds like a plan, he said with a smile. He extended his hand to Janet first. I'm Wayne. As the three introduced themselves, his gaze was completely fixed on her. He was attracted to her. She wondered if he was imagining what her body looked like underneath her turquoise blazer and plaid skirt. Are you supposed to be Paul Bunyan? Heather said flirtatiously. No, this is me every day, he said wryly. Janet inhaled. This was him. Celia Green's son. A chill ran down Janet's spine as she, Heather, and Olivia exchanged a look of hesitation. It would be okay. He was kind, warm, and friendly. It was to be expected that, considering his circumstances, he'd be a bit socially awkward. It wasn't like any of them could ever understand how undergoing such a tragedy and so young could affect you. Well, I'm a terrible host, Wayne said, gesturing up the hill. It's up this way. True to his word, he'd begun setting up the kindling for a bonfire and wiped off leaves from the splinted wood benches that surrounded the pit. As he adjusted the precise positioning of branches and old cardboard, Olivia wobbled on her seat. She nearly fell, but caught herself as Wayne went to steady it. Heather scooted over so Olivia could join her. I need to get those replaced, Wayne said. Those are the same ones I sat on as a kid. It's hard to let go. I can imagine, Olivia replied. Janet was shivering profusely. It wasn't a very cold night, but all she could think of was how nice the fire would feel. Wayne looked at her, concerned. You okay? Just cold, she managed. She's the designated driver, said Heather. So we're doing great. Wayne gave them a look. Who wants cider? Yes, please, Janet said. Olivia and Heather also agreed to a cup. There's no booze, he warned. No worries, said Heather with a plastered grin. He looked back at the pit. Roger taught me how to build fires. It's all about the methodology. After a moment, he took a match and set it ablaze, illuminating their surroundings orange. He beamed them a smile and went inside to get the cider. Once he was out of earshot, Heather leaned into Janet and Olivia.
Okay, this place officially gives me the creeps.
Why? He's harmless, Janet said.
Are you sure?
Heather challenged.
What if he killed those people 20 years ago?
No one said anything. Wayne came back a moment later with the cider. As they talked, Janet was pretty sure he asked what they studied, how they'd all ended up in Plimpton, and that he was awfully uncurious about why they were really there. Sitting and watching the dancing flames, Janet thought that this was the first time she'd felt alive in months. Then she remembered feeling very tired. The room was warm and smelled of cinnamon. Janet's head throbbed as she realized she was lying in a bed, dressed in a scratchy, withered beige nightgown. Intuitively, she knew this had belonged to Celia. She was in a bedroom lost in time. There was a poster of Lou Gehrig facing her, hanging above a wooden horse that looked at least 50 years old on the dresser. Beside it, a signed baseball. She tried to scream, but couldn't. Duct tape covered her mouth. She tried to move, but her wrists and ankles were bound to the bed with rope. Still, she tried to sit up. Her body was lead. A blunt pain hit her pelvis as she did, and the gag meant she couldn't scream. A moment later, she heard footsteps. It was Wayne, of course. He eyed her and knelt down, stroking her forehead. Janet shrank back. Shh, 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 he whispered. There was blood on his hands. Fresh blood. Those ridiculous costumes were getting on my nerves. He didn't elaborate further. Instead, he changed the subject. I'm not an idiot. Janet tried to speak, but it was muffled by the duct tape. I'll take it off soon, but first, you need to let me talk. She relaxed. My stepfather was in a lot of debt. He had a little operation on this property growing. They called it reefer in those days. It was no grand scheme, their deaths. Just a fucking drug hit. He took her gag off. She caught her breath and then cried. What do me and my friends have to do with it? You wanted to come and see the place where my parents were murdered. It's been 42 years and you kids never learn your lesson. No, honey. There's no excuse. Where am I? You're in my room, Wayne said. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, and that's why I'm giving you a chance. What did you do to my friends? He didn't answer. Here's what we're going to do. Your car is right where you left it, and whoever finds the keys first gets to leave. But, she started, no questions, he said, untying her binds. Then, he left. What the fuck? Everything moved in suspended animation. Janet somehow managed her way to a seat, thinking about the blood on his hands, the blood that now caked her forehead. She wobbled up to a stand, groaning from another sharp pain that hit her pelvis. She wasn't wearing underwear under the nightgown. Her upper thighs were bruised. The second she swung open the door, it clicked. She was in a time capsule. Every intricate detail, from the wallpaper, the curtains, the furniture, the radio where a TV should be, was perfect. It all seemed familiar, and she realized This wasn't an ordinary time capsule. She recognized this living room under the sheen of heavily filtered, black and white crime scene photos. He'd redone everything in exactly the way they'd been in 1947. She'd admire it if the circumstances were different. Janet paused and tried to listen. It wasn't a big house, so she had to hear someone, somewhere. Instead, there was nothing but crickets, creaky floorboards, and the wind from outside. Somehow, Janet put one foot in front of the other, not sure where she was going or what she was looking for, as she slowly tiptoed through the hall. "Heather? Olivia?" Her voice croaked as thirst overtook her. How long had she been out? What had he given her? Had he? Her thoughts were cut short by Olivia's scream from the end of the hall. Janet knew what was coming, what awaited her, but she knew what she needed to do. The door was already wide open. There was so much blood in the master bedroom that Janet only recognized Heather from her curled red hair and the costume she'd come here in. Olivia stood beside her, still alive. The keys were right there, in Heather's hand. Olivia was hyperventilating and shaking as she noticed Janet and let out a blood-curdling scream. "Get away from me! This is all your fault! Like I knew he was a psycho?" Janet said. All her fault. Right. Like they hadn't left it the chance to do it. Olivia screamed again. "Oh my God! Why are you so calm?" She snatched the keys from Heather's limp hand. "Are you coming or what?" Janet's blank stare was enough answer for Olivia, who darted down the hall. Another scream, as she heard a gasp, and then a thud. Janet stepped into the hall, watching as blood and drool gurgled from Olivia's mouth. They locked eyes as she tried to stand, only to collapse a moment later. The keys fell onto the floor, and she took her last breath. Towering above her was Wayne. He wiped blood from his mouth and tossed the axe aside. The stench of death was quickly overwhelming the house. "You're different from them." Janet scoffed. "Why? It was my idea to come." He took a step forward. "Because I wanted to impress a guy." She looked past Wayne, down the hall. It was too risky to try and take the keys, she thought. How far were they away from town? 2, maybe 3 miles? It had been so short in the car, but late at night, in nothing but a nightgown, it seemed insurmountable. He took another step and flinched. My God! At least put up a fight! Again, she looked at the keys, the hall, and the front door. Even if she did make it back, then what? Tell the world she'd gotten her friends killed? She felt his hands, gargantuan, against her shoulders. Her head smacked against the doorframe as she fell. She had enough strength left to run her fingers through her hair. Blood. Robbie's party was probably going on. Janet thought of it. The cheap beer, loud music, drugs, dancing, and laughing with other people her age as she tried to soak in the last of her college days. Those were the kinds of bad decisions you were supposed to make in your early 20s. Maybe that was what she needed all along. Not this. Normalcy. What on earth had she been thinking? She thought of her childhood bedroom, the Ramones poster facing her bed, and the lemon tree in her backyard. Goldie would come and snuggle with her in the hammock as she read. She'd been a good, sweet dog. Wayne grabbed her and shoved her against the wall. What would happen now? Would anyone ever find them? Would she ever be remembered? Robbie would find someone else. He'd marry her, cut his hair, get some office job, and have a nice, quiet life. Maybe someday he'd tell his kids about the girl he used to know. What would happen to Wayne? How long had he been like this? Had he killed the Nashua Five too? Or was it all a horrible coincidence? Did he ever have a chance with the hand he'd been dealt? Janet had the faintest vision of the newspaper headline. Plimpton College 3, still missing, it would say. They'd probably use her driver's license picture for the photo. She wasn't sure about Olivia or Heather. The more she thought about it, the more it all made sense. There was a reason things were blank after college. It was always meant to end like this. It just happened sooner than she thought. Again, against the wall. She tasted chocolate, brown sugar. It was a memory. Her mother's cookies. There'd been one afternoon when Janet had been about 11, lying out and reading with Goldie under her arm. "Come on and get 'em fresh out of the oven," her mother said. "But wash your hands first."